Principal Matters Podcast, episode 489. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker back with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for another Principal Matters episode. Jen, before we jump into this week's guest, who is a good friend of mine and a middle school principal and the principal of the year, Blaine Wise, I want to bring a question from a listener. And this question came to you that you passed along. Why don't you take us into the question? And then we're going to go ahead and just say on the front end, no way we can answer this in 5 minutes. We're probably going to break it into two parts, and you can hear this in another Q&A. But what was the question brought to us this week?
The question is, I'm a longtime listener, and I'm reaching out because I'm struggling with burnout. I'd love to hear how you, Will and I, have navigated the most difficult stretches of our careers. What helped us persevere? And then the question also asks, are there particular episodes of the podcast or conversations that we would recommend? But I think we should dig into just answering these on our own. Full disclosure to our listeners, I just said to Will, we might need to do a whole Monday Matters on this, but we're going to give it a crack. We're going to try here with a two-part Q&A. Will, you go first. How have you navigated these difficult stretches, and what helped you persevere?
I've told this story so many times, listeners probably can tell it for me, but my moment, and there's been more than one, but the most memorable moment was my second year as a school administrator, when I came home one night after several nights of barely being home in time to see the kids, and I was running this crazy schedule of getting up at 4 a.m. and checking all my emails and working and making lists and passes and then rushing to school before anyone else, and then skipping lunch and never stopping all day long, and then covering events at night, and then getting home and after the kids would go to bed, working until I couldn't stay awake. And this was the second year in a row of that kind of pace, Jen, when my wife sat down at the table that night and said, Will, you have become a shell of the man you used to be, and the school owns you. And so that night I wrote a letter of resignation. I've told the story a lot, but that was a pivotal moment for me because I realized I'm losing myself and my family in this process, and I need a different career. And even though I didn't take that letter and hand it in the next day, I took it and I put it in a folder and set it on my desk, and I made a promise. I'm going to start revisiting the things that help me to be a whole person, not just a good leader. And then, Jen, that wasn't a silver bullet, but it's been my commitment. It was my commitment over time to keep revisiting those parts that helped me be whole as a person, that then helped me to recalibrate as a leader. And so I'll just say that first, because I know you've had those moments too.
Right. And I'm going to be really honest here. I've had moments where I thought, I hate this. I hate this job. I don't want to drive my car to that place. It's too big. It's too much. I never wanted this. What's happening? And it causes such a huge reckoning personally. And I feel like that's a longer episode. But what I will say is, during the darkest times of my career, whether it was burnout or things happening, in my own life that I felt I couldn't do it all, what I did was just get through that day. And then I got through one more day. There's dark times. Will, you and I are both positive people, but there's dark times. And I want to acknowledge that. Right now, personally, I have lots of friends who are really struggling, the empty nest stuff going on, health stuff going on, job stuff going on. And I am telling them and asking them to tell me my next dark time, just get through today. Just get through today. So that's maybe terrible advice, but it has so much helped me when I thought I have to persevere. And then the only way to do that is just complete today to the best of my ability.
Jen, we promise that we'll break this into a follow-up session. So the next time we do our flagship show, you and I would do another Q&A. But I just want to point people, this is going to be a selfish plug, but I just want to point people to my third book, Pause, Breathe, Flourish, Living Your Best Life as an Educator, because that entire book was a year-long. It took me a year to write that book. And every single chapter was a reflection for me on a different part of my life other than leadership where I had to recalibrate and refocus if I was going to show up to school and be fully myself. And so I'm not saying that like I have the answer or this is the secret sauce. It's not. I I think the one thing I would say that happened through that whole process for me, and you and I've talked about this in other sessions too, is just the power of stopping and reflecting and recognizing what's happening and then taking a tangible action to do something about it. If that tangible action is I'm going to eat something today that's good for me, or I'm going to go for a walk or a jog, or I'm going to ride my bike, or if that tangible action is I'm going to snuggle with my baby tonight, or that whatever that tangible action is, you have to do something that breaks you out of that cycle of just that continuous running. And I know that doesn't answer the question of you and I are not therapists. We're not licensed counselors. We're just practitioners saying, hey, here's what worked for us. But any thoughts you want to add to that as we wrap up our Q&A?
No, I think let's think about it some more. And I'm glad we're going to revisit this again, because I think if you find me a principal who's never had a reckoning day, I would call them not a principal. I think it's everybody.
Mm-hmm. You're not alone. All right, friends, thank you for taking time to write to Jen and me, and we will revisit this question. And thank you for listening to our wonderful guest, Blaine Wise, today, because Blaine is doing the work. He's showing up every single day. He's a practicing principal, and you're going to learn so much from his wisdom today. So, Jen, how can folks stay connected with you and your wonderful resources?
Yep, they can find my website at jenschwanke.com, and there they can sign up for Principal Problems, my weekly newsletter, and get a little news tip in their mailbox every Tuesday.
Well, you don't want to miss it. And you can find today's post and all of our resources at williamdparker.com. And until next time, thanks for doing what matters. We'll talk to you soon. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Why is iExcel used in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts? Because it works. Research across 45 states shows that iExcel schools outperform other schools on state tests. With iExcel, you get a personalized online learning and teaching solution that helps you improve achievement, empower teachers, track progress, and more. This one platform for K-12 helps teachers accomplish what normally would require dozens of other tools. For example, as students practice skills, iExcel automatically adapts to ensure each learner is always supported and challenged at the right level. iExcel also provides every student with a personalized learning plan to help them close knowledge gaps effectively. One of my favorite things about iExcel is their personalized test prep tool. For exams like the SAT and ACT, iExcel will analyze a student's most recent score and generate a custom list of skills to help them boost their scores. If you want to take the load off your teachers so they can do their best work, iExcel can help. Learn more at iexcel.com/PM.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, I want to talk about leading with heart and strategy with a good friend, Blaine Wise. Blaine Wise is a passionate, dedicated education leader with more than 17 years of experience in Oklahoma public schools, and since 2021, he has served as Glenpool Middle School principal, where he's led with purpose, building a high-performing, positive school culture that's earned him statewide recognition. In 2025, he was named the Oklahoma Association of Secondary School Principals and Oklahoma Middle Level Education Association Middle Level Principal of the Year. Congratulations, Blaine. He began his career as a classroom teacher at Glenpool High School and later served as a teacher and assistant principal at Charles Page High School and Charles Page Freshman Academy. And with a strong foundation in instruction and leadership, he is someone that believes in leading with both his heart, but also his strategy. He holds a bachelor's degree from Haskell Indian Nations University and a master's from Southern Nazarene. And he's known for his collaborative, student-centered approach. He also serves in leadership roles in both his state association and the National Association of Secondary School Principals, and he's currently the president-elect for the Oklahoma Association of Secondary School Principals. He's also launched his own website where he shares actionable leadership strategies, and he leads with gratitude, models excellence, and loves his students, staff, and his school community. Welcome to Principal Matters Podcast, Blaine. Why don't you fill in the gaps on that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
Uh, I think you did really well. Hi, thank you for having me, Will Parker. We've known each other for a little while now. Um, Something that people might not know about me is I am not. I didn't go to school to be in education. This was just something that it my it just led me to this. And so, sometimes you're like, how did the universe lead me here? And this is one of those things. And education was not my goal in life, and that was not my passion. But people has been my passion, and this is where it's led me. So.
Oh, well, tell us that story because I've got other questions I want to ask you, but I love origin stories, Blaine. And
Yeah.
yes, you and I have known each other for a long time. We both live in Oklahoma. When I served as the state executive director for OASSP and OMLEA, at that time you were a young leader stepping in, and now you're a veteran, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what inspired you to do this work? How did you go from not being interested in education to where you are now?
So my bachelor's degree is actually in American Indian Studies. I went to Haskell Indian Nations University. If people don't know about Haskell, it is a four-year university that serves only Native American students. I am Seminole Indian from here in Oklahoma. I went up there to play football. And how I got there is I had a football scholarship to another university, but because I was kind of a knucklehead in high school, I did not meet the educational requirements the academic requirements to get into that university. And so I spent the first semester that I was supposed to be in college working blue collar work. And then, that was eye opening. And so I was like, I am not meant for blue collar work. And so when the spring semester came, I went to school. I was like, I got to get an education. I need to, I wanted to make my parents proud. And so I went up to Haskell, played football, met my future wife up there. She is Alaskan Native. And then when I graduated, I was actually working for the government for a year for the Office of Trust Records. So I was working in Lenexa, Kansas, and there is a cave there, a metropolitan cave or metroplex. It goes anywhere from 60 to 100 feet below the Earth's surface. And there's a bunch of businesses down there. And I worked in there and working with fiduciary trust records for Native American tribes. And then about in May, we were going to move to Southern California, to Hemet, California, and I was going to work for a tribe out there. And that fell through. And then I was scrambling. I was like, what am I going to do? Well, the best man in my wedding, he was already a teacher and a coach here at Glenpool, the same school we went to high school at. And he's like, hey, you should apply for the ISS position. So I started in school suspension as the in-school suspension supervisor and worked my way and got my alternative cert that first year. Back when I got my alternative cert, I had mentor teachers from NSU, and a mentor professor used to come and watch me teach. And then I remember applying that following May, and they hired me on full time at Glenpool as a history teacher. And so that is my origin story, how I got into
Oh my
education.
gosh, Blaine, I did not know all of that
Yeah.
background and did not realize you're an alum of Glenpool. I knew you had left there to become an assistant principal in a neighboring district and were doing phenomenal work there. And then Glenpool apparently got you back to where you are now. Let's talk a little bit about Glenpool Middle School because you've been serving there now, but this is your community. What are some of the things that are happening there that you're most proud of with your students or teachers or your community?
The culture that we've built here, on a number of occasions when people come into the building, they tell me there's a feeling about the building. The vibe here is really, really good. People seem to have a little bit more pep in their step here, and I hope that all starts with me. I know when I was brought in, that was one of the reasons why they chose me for this position was to, change the culture here in the building. And so some of the things that I will tell you, I am very proud of one thing that we started doing this year. And so at the beginning of the year, you want to introduce your kids to your teachers. And so last school year, as at the end of the school year, I was meeting with my admin team and I was sitting there and I popped up and I said, I got an idea for next year how we're going to introduce our teachers to our students. I said, let's get the inflatable tunnel that they use at high school football games. Let's set it up in a gym, and I'm going to announce the teams of teachers out in front of the kids. And I was just going to, and I called them our superstars, and I played, the intro music that the 90s Bulls used to play, if you're a basketball fan. So I played that music. I had a whole spiel that, that I read off about each group, the electives team, the social studies team, the ELA team, the math team, the special ed team. And I introduced them, and the students went crazy for each group. And we had the lights dimmed low. We had a spotlight on it, and they ran out, and it was so much fun. And the students loved it. The teachers loved it. It just created just a really, really awesome start to the school year. So we're going to keep that tradition alive.
Blaine,
sure.
I love that so much. And, you and I were talking right before we hit recording about how even though now you've been in the same school for 5 years and most people have found their stride, they've built their culture, they've attracted new staff members, but and you do presentations now in Oklahoma as one of the officers of your state association, but also because you love to share what you're learning. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted you on the show, is just to share some of the things that you're learning in this practice that other leaders can keep in mind in there. So what are some of the takeaways that you're setting on that might help other leaders as they think about building a strategy around strong culture?
Culture doesn't just happen. Everything you do has to be intentional. From the way you set up the beginning of the school year, the way you hold meetings, the things you say within those meetings, how you interact with your staff, how you interact with your parents and your students. Even when you hold a meeting with the individual teacher, what does that look like? Are you calling them to your office and them sitting across from you, or are you going into their classroom during their planning period and having that conversation with them? And it don't have to technically just be about school. Check on your people about their personal lives. And so when you start doing those types of things and being very intentional about your interactions with everybody you come in contact with, those little things come into this big thing of the culture that you're trying to build, because we don't get an opportunity to, we're not in charge of how we make people feel, if that makes sense. We're only in charge of how we act to people in our interactions, and their perspective is their perspective. So you want to make sure that every interaction with the people that you come in contact with, you leave them with a positive taste in their mouth, is, man, that guy got my back, or that guy's really here to support me. And throughout your principalship, you're going to be put into hard situations where you can throw your staff under the bus, or you really back them up. And when you back them up and have their back in those difficult situations, they will speak amongst themselves, and then they really feel and know in their heart of hearts that this guy has my back. This guy here is here to support me. And so, I can think of a very specific situation where that happened, but I'm not going to get into the weeds of that. But that was a very intense situation, but I knew the outcome of that because the teachers talked, and I would get people say, hey, thank you for doing that for X, Y, and Z. And so those types of things, that's how you build your culture of support. And it goes a long ways for sure.
It sure does. Blaine, you said so many things here, and I'm a note taker, but you said that culture is intentional. It's how you conduct your staff meetings, it's how you interact when you're with the people that are your staff and your teachers, but it's also that one-on-one interaction. And then I think it's so true that we aren't responsible for how other people feel, but we're responsible for how intentional we are about the way we're going to interact with people. And you and I both know that publicly praising and in privately correcting is the right ingredient for students, but it's also the right ingredients for teachers too. I know we have listeners who listen to this show who are seasoned, but also who are either aspiring or new to this role. And so in addition to those thoughts, what would you say to that younger leader as just some things to hold on to as they're stepping into school leadership?
Oh, man. Well, when you're first stepping into school leadership, you don't know what you don't know. You need to have a group of mentors that you can reach out to and lean on. So keep them in your favorites on your cell phone so you can reach out to them. And listen to your staff and listen to your students. Because this is ours, not mine. That was one of the things that I always talked about. This isn't Mr. Wise's school. This is our school. So how are we going to collectively reach our goal together? Because this is our goal. How are we going to get there together? Because you're going to need everybody pulling in the same direction if you're going to get there. One of the things, when I first started presenting, the title of my presentation was Just Do It. If you have a good idea that you feel is going to lead you to the direction that you want to go, just do it. You're the principal of the building. Sometimes but hey, if this is a good idea, let's do it. And if another teacher has a good idea, let's do it. One of the things that we'd always talked about with Chris LeGrand, and I think he'd said it, and maybe even you said it, and it's the smartest person in the room is the room. And so let's have a collective effort in building what we want to build together. And that's how it makes it strong, if it's built together as a unit, rather than just, hey, Mr. Wise says, and he's a dictator, and no, that's not going to work. It's ours together. So but how are you going to make it work? I mean, don't shoot down everything that a student or a teacher brings to you. You say, okay, well, how are we going to make this work? How are you going to make this work? And I'll support you. So don't just come with problems, come with solutions and ideas. And if it don't work, it doesn't work, and we'll move on to the next thing. And that's leadership, right? Not every idea is going to be a knockout of the park. Trust me, I've had a lot of that fell flat on their face. But there's a lot of, it's an ongoing process of, hey, this didn't work, let's retweak it and let's launch it like this, and maybe this is going to work. I spend that whole month of June kind of reflecting on the entire school year, and then July, I start building the school year. One of the things I do for my staff is on August 10th, that first day of in-service, I got a curriculum map, so to speak, with everything we do from August 10th to May 22nd. And so it is, I'm looking at it right now above my desk. That's how detailed I like to be in this role. Mm-hmm. So
no, so many good things, and you brought it full circle. Have a group of people you can reach out to, especially when you're beginning in leadership, because as you said, the smartest person in the room is the room. But also recognize the school isn't mine, it's ours. So inviting in good ideas, but then recognizing too, now you have the responsibility and the privilege to take action on those ideas. Mm-hmm. But then the power of trial and error, and also, Blaine, the power of reflection. And so I'm glad you brought it there, because there is a strategy to your culture. It's not just a matter of the heart of this work too. It's also, I'm going to call it the smart of this work, and bringing to your staff at the beginning of the year, here's our calendar. As we map out all of the things that we're doing from August to May, you're being the teacher of your school. Just like a great teacher does that in a classroom setting, you're making sure that all of those things we've identified in advance of where we're going to grow, where we're going to go, what we're going to be involved in, are articulated. I'm curious, and maybe you don't feel like a veteran, but you are, Blaine. 18 years, this is your 18th. I know I said 17 when I read your bio, but that was because you're stepping into your 18th now. But we have listeners who also have been doing this work a while. And so I'm just curious and what you would add to the conversation for them of how to stay motivated in this work for the long haul.
Well, I don't like to use the word motivated, because you can become unmotivated very, very easily. And so if you're in this work, you have to be inspired to be the best at all times. And so how do you want to grow as a leader? And you got to seek out those things, because there's so much out there to seek out, to read, to listen to podcasts, YouTube channels and all the TikToks, and there's so much information out there to help grow you as a leader. So you have to be inspired at all times. I mean, because if you're not inspired to be a continuous lifelong learner, you're not modeling what you expect from your teachers. You're not modeling what you expect from your students. So I just want to be better for my kids every day, better for my teachers every day. And sometimes you leave this role on a day, during the week, and like, man, I did not do good today. I was not a good leader today for whatever reason. And then you like I brought back earlier is that self-reflection. That has to happen every day. That has to happen during the day. It's, hey, I need a mental reset. I need to gather my thoughts here before I approach this issue. So self-reflection is key for any leader trying to grow. But you got to be inspired. This is inspired work, not something that you can commit to or uncommit to. You got to be inspired about being the best, about being your best. So that's I don't know if that answers your question for the veteran, because if you're not inspired to continue to grow, it's probably time to find another position.
There you go.
And right now, I'm still inspired to grow as a leader, and so I love what I do.
Now, Blaine, I love how thoughtful that was. For you, it's not a matter of motivation. For you, it's a matter of commitment. And if I want to keep that commitment, if I want to stay inspired in that commitment, you said several things, but the thing that stood out to me was that cycle of reflection, which is the same thing that we invite teachers and students to do in their learning, which is let's pause for a moment and reflect on where am I based on the information I've had before, and what can I modify based on how I want to move forward. How I'm going to ask a really practical question that another leader maybe wanted to ask you. What does that look like in practice for you, Blaine, to find that time? Because you obviously take time in the summer for reflection. What does that look like when you're in the heat of the school year?
Sometimes you got to close your door and say, hey, you'll get hit with a lot of questions and that need answers. And sometimes you say, hold on, let me think about that, and I'll get back to you. And because, one, they're still going to need an answer. Two, whatever answer you give it needs to be your best answer, your best effort, your best answer. And so sometimes just firing off at the hip is not best practice. So let me think about this, because in our position in this chair, there's a lot of moving pieces that other people don't see, where if I make this decision, there's a domino effect for X, Y, and Z. And so being knowing the big picture of your building and maybe even in your district, and then act on whatever was brought to you. So I think I answered your question there. There was just so many things in my head right there, but
No, you did, because the question was, how do you, in the heat of the moment, find time to reflect
yeah,
for a better decision moving forward? And you're right, you don't have the luxury of a month of the summer to really think and chew on it. But sometimes it may just be as simple as, you know what, that's a really important decision. Give me a minute to think about that and I'll
yeah,
follow up with you. Or, like you said, and I've had to say this to, it's actually some friends recently who've reached out to me when they're kind of beginning to feel that drowning, overwhelming. And I'm just like, I'll ask them, when's the last time you scheduled a meeting with you? Because that sounds so selfish. But sometimes, and I know leaders now who will schedule into their daytime for them, and they shut that door so that they have an opportunity just to gain their own sanity, regain their own sanity, get focused, maybe knock out some tasks, but also maybe just the quietness to make a really good decision. Blaine, you also work with a team. You also have other leaders that you're developing within your work as well. And you've also been developing recently a place where people can find the lessons you're learning. So you can't help it. You're always the teacher and the coach. So talk to us a little bit about that work, the work you've been doing, sharing your thoughts and your lessons with other leaders.
So, yeah, I mean, it's new. I really enjoy presenting. When I got into this work, I wanted to be the teacher I needed as a student. And then when I got into administration, I wanted to be the administrator I needed as a teacher and as a student. And so now I got an opportunity with 18 years under my belt. I feel like I have some things to share with people that could help them grow in their leadership capacity. And so, I'm very passionate about it, and I want to be the presenter or the mentor that I wanted to sit in the audience for. One of the guys that I saw back in the day was Principal Kafele, and that was, he's the GOAT of presenters, and so when I heard him the first time, I was like, that's what I want to do, speak with passion, speak with conviction, inspire people to give their best, inspire people to, is my school better because I lead it? That was something, and so and that takes a lot of self-reflection. That talk about a look in the mirror right there. And so that's kind of that's the direction that I want to head. I just want to help people grow in their leadership capacity. If I can inspire you or show you some practical strategies that I've used here in my school with my teachers or my students, I'm an open book. Everything that we do is stolen, it's so share it with everybody. That's why I wear this whistle. I've been wearing this whistle since I started being a principal. This is my identity. I try to coach students. I try to coach teachers. And so anything I can do to help you grow, reach out to me. This week, I'm actually speaking to the FCCLA organization of 400 students over at Jinx High School. And then I'm going up to Grove the following week for their FCCLA event. And so those are our future leaders. So I get to have a conversation with them too. And so it's just a passion of mine. I'm smiling talking about it because I love what I get out of it, but I love just sharing with people, because a lot of times when we're in our positions, it's like we all have that imposter syndrome, like probably when you started this podcast, Will, it's like, do I really have enough to say? Are people really going to listen? Are people going to, appreciate what I'm doing? But now you're on what episode, probably 500 and something, I don't know. And you've written 6 books. I have 2 of them at my house, or I don't know how many books you've written. I can't remember, but I got a couple at the house. So it's, I don't know. You inspire me too, Will. So,
Well,
just from our conversation at breakfast that day, and I'm sure you'll tell the audience about that. But so,
you inspire me, Blaine, and we do have a lot in common, because I remember that moment in my own leadership where I was probably in a very similar place that you are, where I realized I have something to teach now. I'm doing this work. No one ever perfects the work, but you begin to recognize areas where you have a strength, and then you get that itch to like, okay, I loved teaching students things that I was discovering that were new, and I love teaching my staff the things that I'm discovering that are getting us better and better. How about my peers? And because I love to see other leaders inspired in their work too. And you and I, when we first met, I was still the state executive director for our principals association, secondary and middle level associations in Oklahoma. And I remember you attending that as a young admin, and I saw you at breakfast, asked you if you had anybody sit with you. You said you didn't. I sat down with you. And in my mind, I was thinking, man, we need more young, eager leaders stepping into this work, because by this point I was the seasoned guy. And so I'm just really probing and asking you questions, and I'm trying to figure out, where you fit, et cetera. And it was so funny. I've teased you before, but you, like, right in the middle of the breakfast, you stopped and said, "Hey, can you just remind me, like, who are you?" And and so I just remember just being like, it was so awesome, because I was like, this is one of those moments. It just reminded me, like, being back in school, where you just assume people have the same context you do. But it also brought me back to the two truths Will always talks about, Blaine, which is one, you're not as important as you think you are. Not everybody knows who you are. And that's okay. That's how you should work, is recognizing with humility that most people don't are thinking of, they know their work and their place. But the second thing, I think, that the truth I always say is, you're more important than you think you are, because no matter if someone knows you or doesn't know you, you have the opportunity at that moment to influence them towards growth. And so, just to bring this full circle, Blaine, I've just seen you modeling that ever since I've met you, in the way that you lead your school, in the way that you inspire your staff, and now in the way that you're inspiring your peers across the state of Oklahoma. And I just want to invite listeners to stay connected with you and your work. So, what's your website? What's your social media links? Where can people find you if they want to connect with you and your work?
So the website is blainewise.com. You can look up, you can request presentations on there. Then you can follow me on X at Blaine Wise Leadership, TikTok, Blaine Wise Leadership. And you can follow my school, our school here, Glenpool Middle School, our Facebook page. We try to stay pretty active in it. And you can see all the things that we do here. It is a big next 2 weeks over here at Glenpool Middle School. We got our fifth annual Tug of Warrior World Championship. And we have a 6-foot trophy that we give out. It's homecoming week this week here in Glenpool, and so we do a big tug of war competition between 7th and 8th grade on Friday. The next week we do a big red ribbon week walkathon. Kids will dress up in their costumes next Friday, and if they reach their fundraiser goal, Mr. Wise will hand out candy on Halloween night from the roof of the school. And if they exceed it to a certain number, I'm going to let them duct tape me to the wall in the gym. So there's a lot of fun things going on this week. And, I'll do anything for the kids, man. And so that's kind of just how I roll.
Oh, Blaine, this is just such full circle for me. I've had friends in your district for many, many years, and have been, in fact, when I first began presenting to my peers, it was the leadership at the time of your district that invited me to come down and spend some time with their leadership team, just sharing those things. And I just have such fond memories of your community and the great people there, and what a blessing and a joy it is for your students to have you as their principal. So I cannot wait to see you in a photo of you duct taped to the wall. Well, Blaine, thank you for your commitment to culture and the strategy of culture. And Principal Matters listeners will put a link to Blaine's website and his contact information in the show notes. But Blaine, as we wrap up, any parting words you want to say to listeners?
This is the best work there is. Keep pouring into people, keep pouring into students, because we don't know when that flower is going to blossom, but it's going to blossom if you pour in the right things to your staff, to your students, and to your community. And one day it'll show, and you'll be like, I had a hand in that. And that's the inspiring work. That's what keeps me motivated, getting those messages from time to time from a student. He's like, you remember you were suspending me, but you also had a really deep conversation, and that stuck to me all my adult life, and it's helped me grow. And so that those, you never know when those are coming. So like I said, you got to be intentional with every interaction that you have with people, and so because you never know what sticks with them. So
that's what it's all about.
That's what I got.
Well, Blaine Wise, thank you so much for doing what matters, and Principal Matters listeners, thank you for doing what matters, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamvparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.